Hi, this is Shrabasti and welcome to our channel Today's Affairs. With a GDP of $3 trillion, India is world's largest democracy and has the fifth largest economy in the world behind Germany, Japan, China and the United States. Notably, the country has a growing influence in the global south, which is mainly made of the countries of Africa, Asia and Latin America that will increasingly clash against India's own partnership and relationship with the West, especially with the United States, with Europe, which require different things from India. Ever since Russia's invasion in Ukraine, India has been mostly tight-lipped in condemning Russia over the act. Instead, India has boosted its import of heavily discounted Russian oil since the war began. This has ruffled the powers of the Western countries, especially the US and the EU. India has a massive security problem on both its eastern and western borders with China, and it is looking for ways to balance what it sees as a very powerful Chinese threat. And one way to do that is working closely with other partners who have their own Chinese strategic problems, like the United States, like the European Union and a few countries of the Southeast Asia, so that balance is an important thing to maintain. But will India's growing economic clout mean that it will remain non-aligned in the years to come? More growth over time will also mean that India will be able to convert some of its prosperity into military influence so as to deal with the different kinds of security threats it's facing now. India has witnessed several challenges that are quite relatable to the challenges faced by the other developing countries. India has been able to slowly surpass them in a sustainable way that is seen as a positive benchmark for countries to sort of emulate in the long run. Even though bilateral trade between Russia and India hit a record of $45 billion, the US is by a long way New Delhi's biggest trading partner. That year, trade between the US and India exceeded $190 billion. And yet, India has not married its trading relationships with military alliance. The US-India relationship is one for the future, whereas the India-Russia relationship economically is one of the past. And so, what the US has been trying to do is move even further forward into the future by deepening its economic and trading relationship with India to make it realize that siding with Russia over these kinds of issues and conflicts is not in its long-term interest. As Russia's invasion of Ukraine drags on, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called for peace and cooperation. This is not an era of war, but it is one of dialogue and diplomacy. India is performing a delicate balancing act between protecting its own interests while maintaining ties with its trading partners. But as the world becomes more polarized, can India maintain its stance of non-alignment, or will it be forced to pick sides? India is a member of numerous regional and multilateral institutions. The country is a member of security-centered blocs Shanghai Cooperation Organization alongside China and Russia, and the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue alongside the United States, which has long-lasting contentious relations with both China and Russia. India is also a founding member of BRICS, a coalition made up of emerging economies that includes both Russia and China. At the recent 15th BRICS summit, the bloc has more than doubled its membership to include Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in 2024. How can we explain India's foreign policy decisions to be a member of all different bodies that are not necessarily aligned with each other? Over the last 10 to 20 years, non-alignment has incrementally transformed into a policy of multi-alignment, where India is open to different kinds of groupings, arrangements, bilateral partnerships with countries that it did not have good relations with, as long as it advances the national interest, which is economic transformation. India plays an influential role in international financial bodies such as the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, and the Asian Development Bank. Over the last decade, India has had limited development in free trade deals, including pulling out of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership (RCEP), considered to be the world's largest trade agreement. However, in the last few years, the country has ramped up its free trade agreements (FTAs) with countries including Japan, South Korea, and the United Arab Emirates. It also has FTAs within its geographic neighborhood, such as with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN, and directly with countries such as Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia. We are looking into India's participation in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is also seen as multilateral game changer, as they like to say, to be able to redirect supply chains away from China, to hopefully lessen the dependence of developing countries towards China. Even as Modi seeks to transform India's economy, the country has a long tradition of protectionism. Even as Modi seeks to transform India's economy, the country has a long tradition of protectionism. Most recently, it banned food exports like rice, wheat, and sugar. While the move was to cool domestic prices, it exacerbated a global food crisis smarting from the war in Ukraine. India has to always balance between the strategic considerations, which are compelling it to be more open economically, security-wise, with the political economic constraints. The different kinds of industries and farms within India that do not want to compete with other foreign farms. That it is responsible for 1.4 billion people. It's not going to be neat or pretty, and there's going to be a lot of zigzagging back and forth between protectionism and openness. But I think the broader trend is towards more free trade over time. Besides privatizing trade, another factor that influences India's foreign policy is its neighbor up north, China. While bilateral trade crossed $100 billion in 2022, India's relationship with China has worsened over the last decade due to border disputes.